Hey, Barry Schaefer here, founder and director of Inward Resources. You know, I think one of the most underserved subjects in youth ministry is the subject of suffering. When I think about how much loss can be experienced in the adolescent years and how little attention we give to that subject, it's no wonder that so many young adults or even just adults don't have a good answer to the question, why does an all-loving, all-powerful God allow bad things to happen? And you know, years ago when I was working through my own journey of loss and losing my wife to breast cancer, I had a conversation with a good friend, a church leader, who said, you know, in the church, we don't have a good theology of loss. And when you think about it, we don't. The way we phrase our prayer request lists at church kind of show that. You know, when the news is good, praise God. When the news is bad, crickets. We got nothing. And to help serve this area of youth ministry, Inward has released a small group study on the subject of suffering. It's entitled Lossology101, Developing a Personal Theology of Loss. And like the title suggests, this is an introductory look at the subject of suffering and an opportunity to help teens just begin to think theologically about suffering. In 7 sessions, the study offers a treetop look at the subject of suffering. And as with all our studies, we provide a personal study for the leader. And with Lossology 101, you can then choose which session guide you'd like to use, such as high school, college age, the coffee house setting. We also have guides for social media support as well. If I may, just let me step into the table of contents just for a moment. Session 1 is entitled The Anatomy of the Fall. You know, in times of great loss, we'll hear people say, well, we live in a fallen world, but what does that mean? And is it even helpful? In Session 2, we look at the first act of evil of Cain versus Abel, and we see how that scene can prepare us for understanding the consequences of the fall. In Session 3, we look at a scene in Acts chapter 12 where Peter and James are both in prison. Peter is freed, James is killed. What gives? You know, they both had the same people praying, but outcomes were very different. Well, this scene helps us understand expectations that we should have when going through hard times ourselves. Session 4 is entitled The Holy Snort Cry. You know, in one of Jesus' most personal scenes in the Gospel of John, when he was heartbroken over watching his close friends experience the pain of this world, we learn that Jesus was a snort crier. And you know, there's great comfort in that. In Session 5, we look at the construct that God redeems the pain. And that's a construct that's gotten a lot of traction lately. But what does that mean, and how does it even work? In Session 6, we turn toward hope. You know, sometimes God seems a little bit silent in our pain. Well, this may be in part because he knows where this is all headed, and he knows that our light and momentary troubles are going to be a blip when we get to heaven. Session 7, we look at our response. How are we to respond to all of this? You know, Job said some pretty harsh things to God and about God, and yet Job was complimented by God for speaking accurately of God. This can teach us a lot about how we're to respond to loss in our lives. So, I invite you to check the study out. I would count it a privilege to walk alongside you and your youth ministry on this sacred subject. Thanks much for checking in.